First contact and tension. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of humanity's first orbital diplomatic station, watching the massive Federation vessel eclipse the stars. Its crystalline surface caught Earth's reflected light, creating prismatic patterns that would have been beautiful if not for the gravity of the situation. The ship had arrived 3 days ago, bearing representatives of the Stellar Federation, a coalition of spacefaring species that controlled nearly a quarter of the Milky Way. "They're early," Dr. James Rodriguez said, joining her at the viewport. The xenorchaeologist's usually cheerful demeanor was subdued. The Federation delegation wasn't supposed to arrive for another hour. "They're testing us," Sarah replied, straightening her formal uniform. "Every move they make is calculated to assert dominance." The Federation's initial message had been clear: Earth could join their empire peacefully or face subjugation. They'd given humanity 1 month to decide, clearly expecting immediate submission. Instead, humanity had surprised them by requesting this diplomatic summit. The station's AI chimed softly. Federation shuttle approaching. Primary delegation consists of 3 Exurians, 2 Ventari, and their security detail. Sarah took a deep breath. Time to show them why rushing to war with humanity would be their biggest mistake. The airlock cycled, and Sarah fought to maintain her diplomatic composure as the Federation delegation entered. The Exurians moved with fluid grace, their iridescent scales shifting colors with each movement. Their ambassador, Kexley, stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. The Ventari were shorter but broader, their crystalline exoskeletons catching the light like living diamonds. Ambassador Chen. Kexley's translator rendered their clicking speech into English. "Your species continues to surprise us. Most civilizations accept Federation protection eagerly. Your resistance is unusual." Sarah smiled, gesturing toward the conference room. "Perhaps that's because you don't yet understand humanity, Ambassador Kexley. We've prepared something that might help with that." The conference room was humanity's pride, a perfect blend of diplomacy and technology. The holographic systems were state-of-the-art, capable of rendering historical events with unprecedented clarity. The room's walls could become transparent, offering a view of Earth below or display any information needed. As the delegation took their seats, James activated the room's environmental controls, adjusting the atmosphere and gravity to match Federation standard. It was a subtle message. Humans could adapt. "Your message spoke of showing us humanity's nature," Kexley said, their upper arms gesturing dismissively. "We already know what we need to know. You are a young species, barely space-capable. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. What could you possibly show us that would change the Federation's position?" Sarah exchanged a glance with James before responding. "With respect, Ambassador, you've seen our present, but you don't understand our past. Before we discuss humanity's future in the galaxy, you need to understand what shaped us." One of the Ventari, their crystalline form glowing with internal light, spoke. "Your history is irrelevant. The Federation brings order to chaos, protection to the weak. This is the natural way." "Natural to you, perhaps." James stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "But humanity's path has been different. We've learned lessons your Federation never had to face." Sarah nodded to the AI, and the room darkened. Above the table, a holographic Earth appeared, but not the peaceful blue marble the Federation knew. This was Earth of the 20th century, wreathed in the fires of global conflict. "You speak of bringing order through force," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the darkness. "We'd like to show you why that approach might not work as well as you expect with humanity." The hologram shifted, showing scenes that made even the stoic Federation delegates shift uncomfortably. Not just battles, but the complexity of human conflict. The strategies, the technologies, the cost, and most importantly, the aftermath. "This is just the beginning," Sarah continued. "Before we discuss terms, you need to understand something crucial about humanity. We don't avoid war because we're weak. We avoid it because we know exactly what we're capable of when pushed too far. Kexley's scales shifted to a deeper hue, a sign of intense interest or concern. You would threaten the Federation with violence. No, Ambassador. Sarah's voice was steel wrapped in silk. We're offering you something far more valuable than threats: perspective. Humanity doesn't want war with the Federation. But before you decide to force one upon us, you should understand exactly what that choice would mean. The hologram shifted again, now showing the International Space Station, the lunar colonies, the Mars terraforming projects, humanity's achievements in peace. We can be partners or enemies, Ambassador. But that choice should be made with full understanding of the consequences. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes meeting Kexley's compound gaze. Shall we begin? The Federation delegates exchanged glances, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by something new: uncertainty. They had come expecting to dictate terms to another primitive species. Instead, they found themselves facing a choice that could reshape their understanding of what it meant to be truly civilized. As Sarah prepared to show them humanity's full history, she knew this was just the beginning. The Federation would either learn to respect humanity as equals, or they would learn why so many others had regretted underestimating the human capacity for both peace and war. The lesson was about to begin, and Sarah could only hope the Federation was wise enough to learn from history rather than be doomed to repeat it. The archives of war. The holographic chamber hummed with energy as Dr. James Rodriguez prepared the next phase of their presentation. The Federation delegates sat in tense silence, their earlier arrogance tempered by what they'd already seen. Ambassador Kexley's scales had shifted to a deep violet, a color that humans had learned indicated deep concentration. What you've shown us so far is concerning, Kexley admitted, their four arms moving in complex patterns. But isolated conflicts don't prove your species' capability for large-scale warfare. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her reflection rippling across the Ventari delegates' crystalline forms. Then let us show you how humanity learned to wage war on a global scale. The room darkened again, and this time the holographic display enveloped them completely. They stood in the trenches of World War I, where the acrid smell of mustard gas seemed to permeate even the sterile air of the diplomatic station. In 1914, James began, his voice steady. Humanity entered its first truly industrialized conflict. We had created machines of war that outpaced our ability to understand their consequences. The scene shifted, showing waves of soldiers charging across no man's land, only to be cut down by machine gun fire. The Federation delegates watched in silence as the horror unfolded. This was merely the beginning. Sarah continued. Humanity learned that technology without wisdom could lead to unprecedented destruction. But more importantly, we learned to adapt. The hologram changed, showing the development of tanks, aircraft, and submarines. Each new weapon bred a counter-weapon. Each strategy led to a counter-strategy. We evolved our warfare faster than any species in your Federation has ever needed to. One of the Ventari spoke, their crystalline voice resonating with uncertainty. Your species survived this, but at what cost? The cost was beyond calculation, James replied. But watch what happened next. The scene shifted to World War I. Massive armies clashed across continents, while aircraft carriers revolutionized naval warfare. The Federation delegates witnessed the blitzkrieg, the island-hopping campaigns, the strategic bombing raids. Your Federation conquers through overwhelming force, Sarah explained. But humanity learned to wage war with everything we had, not just weapons, but economics, industry, psychology, and science. The hologram showed factories converting to wartime production, women entering the workforce, and the massive logistical operations that supported the war effort. This is what makes us different, James added. When we wage war, we don't just commit our military. We commit our entire civilization. Kexley's scales rippled with what might have been concern. And yet you speak of peace. We speak of peace precisely because we understand war, Sarah countered. Watch. The hologram shifted again, this time showing the aftermath. cities rebuilt from ashes, the formation of the United Nations, former enemies becoming allies. After each conflict, we didn't just rebuild. We evolved. We created international laws, diplomatic frameworks, and cooperative institutions, not because we became weak, but because we understood the true cost of failing to maintain peace. The Ventari delegates' crystalline forms dimmed slightly, a sign of deep contemplation. James seized the moment to drive their point home. Your Federation sees war as a tool of expansion. We see it as a last resort because we know exactly what it means to commit to total war. When humanity fights, we don't just send armies. We mobilize entire populations. We convert our entire industrial base. We innovate at speeds that would terrify you. Sarah stepped into the center of the holographic display, her figure now surrounded by images of humanity's military evolution through the decades. You came here thinking you found another primitive species to absorb into your Federation. Instead, you found a civilization that has spent its entire history learning how to fight for survival, and more importantly, learning why we shouldn't. The room fell silent as the holograms faded, leaving only the soft glow of Earth visible through the station's windows. Kexley stood, their massive form casting long shadows across the chamber. You speak of peace while showing us war, they said, their translator struggling to convey the complexity of their tone. You claim to value diplomacy while demonstrating your capacity for destruction. Your species is a paradox. No, Sarah replied softly. We're survivors. Every war you've seen taught us something essential, not just about fighting, but about the importance of finding alternatives to conflict. We're not showing you these archives to threaten you, but to help you understand why forcing war upon humanity would be a mistake. James activated one final hologram, a simple display showing the exponential growth of human military technology over the past century. Your Federation has spent millennia expanding through force. We spent millennia learning to survive against ourselves. Which do you think prepared us better for the challenges of the galaxy? The Federation delegates huddled together, their private discussions masked by electronic scramblers. When they finally turned back to the human representatives, there was something new in their bearing. A reluctant respect. You have given us much to consider, Kexley announced. Perhaps there is more to learn about humanity before we make our final decision. Sarah nodded, knowing they had crossed a crucial threshold. The Federation hadn't backed down, but they were beginning to understand that humanity wasn't simply another primitive species to be conquered. They were something the Federation had never encountered before, a civilization that had forged itself in the fires of its own conflicts and emerged with both the power to wage war and the wisdom to avoid it. As the delegates prepared for the next phase of the presentation, Sarah caught James's eye. They both knew that showing humanity's capacity for war was only the beginning. The real challenge would be convincing the Federation that peace between their civilizations wasn't just possible, it was necessary. Evolution through fire. The diplomatic station's lights pulsed softly as the environmental systems adjusted to the prolonged presence of the Federation delegation. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched as Dr. Rodriguez calibrated the holographic array for their next presentation. The Federation delegates had requested a brief recess to process what they'd learned, but now they sat ready, their postures betraying a new wariness. You've shown us the scope of human warfare, Kexley said, their scales now a shifting pattern of deep blues and violets. But survival requires more than just the ability to fight. Precisely, Sarah responded, nodding to James. Which is why we'd like to show you how conflict shaped every aspect of human civilization. The holographic display activated again. But this time, instead of battlefields, it showed laboratories, hospitals, and research centers. James stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of academic authority. Every war humanity fought accelerated our evolution in unexpected ways. The pressure of conflict forced us to innovate not just weapons, but medicine, technology, and social structures. The display showed early MASH units transforming into modern trauma centers. Our understanding of emergency medicine advanced decades in near years. Techniques developed to save soldiers now save millions of civilian lives. One of the Venturi delegates leaned forward, their crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. Many species develop medical technology through warfare. This is not unique. But the scale and speed of our adaptation is, Sarah countered. The hologram shifted to show the development of computers, from early code-breaking machines to modern quantum systems. What began as tools for war became the foundation of our modern civilization. James highlighted specific innovations, radar becoming weather prediction systems, military GPS evolving into civilian navigation, nuclear weapons research leading to clean energy solutions. Every tool of destruction taught us something about creation. More importantly, Sarah added, each conflict forced us to confront our own nature. The display showed the evolution of international law, human rights declarations, and peacekeeping missions. We didn't just advance technologically. We evolved socially and ethically. Kexley's upper arms made a dismissive gesture. Ethics in warfare. This seems contradictory. The contradiction drove our evolution, James explained. The hologram now displayed modern robotics, AI systems, and precision weapons. We developed technologies to minimize civilian casualties, not because we became weak, but because we understood the true cost of indiscriminate warfare. The scene shifted to show humanitarian missions, disaster response teams, and international cooperation efforts. Every advancement in our capacity for destruction led to an equal advancement in our capacity for aid and rescue. Sarah moved through the hologram, her figure seeming to walk through decades of human achievement. The Federation sees strength in uniformity, in the ability to impose order. Humanity found strength in diversity, in the ability to adapt and change. The display showed the International Space Station, then the lunar colonies, and finally the Mars terraforming projects. These weren't just scientific achievements, Sarah explained. They were the result of former enemies learning to work together, applying military technology and logistics to peaceful expansion. Your species seems to define itself through conflict, one of the Venturi observed, their crystalline voice resonating with uncertainty. No, James corrected. We define ourselves by how we respond to challenges. War was just the most extreme challenge we faced. The hologram shifted one final time, showing Earth's current defense systems, a network of satellites, stations, and ships that could transform from scientific outposts to military platforms in moments. Everything you see, Sarah gestured to the display, every achievement, every innovation, emerged from our understanding that survival requires more than just military might. It requires the ability to adapt, to learn, and most importantly, to change. Kexley stood, their massive form casting shadows through the holographic display. You speak of change, yet you prepare for war even now. We prepare for survival, Sarah corrected. The same innovations that power our defense systems also protect us from solar flares, track potentially hazardous asteroids, and maintain our communications network. Every tool we create serves multiple purposes, because that's how humanity learned to survive. James highlighted specific examples. Quantum computers that could coordinate military operations now managing global climate models, missile guidance systems repurposed for automated disaster response, military drone technology adapted for exploration of hostile environments. Your Federation's strength comes from conquest, Sarah concluded. Humanity's strength comes from adaptation. We don't just survive conflicts. We learn from them, grow from them, evolve through them. The Federation delegates conferred quietly, their discussion masked by their security fields. When they turned back, Kexley's scales had taken on a new color, one the humans hadn't seen before. You have given us much to consider, the Federation ambassador said slowly. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge humanity's place in the galaxy. Sarah exchanged a glance with James. They had shown the Federation how humanity's trials had forged them into something unique, a species that had learned to turn the crucible of conflict into a forge for progress. As the delegation prepared for their next session, the humans knew they had achieved something significant. The Federation was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for warfare, but their ability to emerge from each conflict, not just survived, but evolved. The question now was whether this understanding would lead to peace, or whether the Federation would still choose to test humanity's capabilities firsthand. The price of peace. The orbital station rotated slowly, its viewport now facing the moon, where the glittering lights of human colonies traced patterns across the lunar surface. Ambassador Kexley stood transfixed by the view, their scales shifting through shades of deep indigo. "Your achievements are considerable," they admitted, "but the Federation has seen many civilizations rise and fall. All claimed their way was unique." Sarah Chen approached the viewport, standing beside the towering alien diplomat. "Then let us show you something truly unique about humanity, how we learn to value peace." The holographic system activated once more, but instead of displaying battles or technology, it showed something more personal: the human cost of war. Veterans struggling with PTSD, families mourning lost loved ones, cities rebuilding from devastation. "This is why we sought alternatives to conflict," James explained, his voice soft but carrying weight. "Not from weakness, but from understanding." The display shifted to show the aftermath of World War II, former enemies becoming allies, international cooperation replacing conflict, shared scientific ventures bridging cultural divides. "Your Federation imposes peace through strength," Sarah observed. "Humanity learned to build peace through understanding our shared pain." The hologram expanded to show the transformation of post-war Europe and Japan, the Marshall Plan, the creation of the European Union. Former battlegrounds became trading partners. Ancient enemies became closest allies. One of the Venturi delegates stirred, their crystalline form catching the starlight. "This seems inefficient. The Federation's way ensures immediate compliance." "Immediate, yes," James agreed. "But is it lasting? Look at what humanity achieved through willing cooperation." The display showed the International Scientific Coalition, where scientists from former enemy nations worked together on everything from climate change to space exploration. "We learned that voluntary allies are stronger than conquered subjects." Kexley's upper arms moved in a gesture of skepticism. "Yet you maintain military forces." "Because we understand something your Federation doesn't," Sarah replied. "True peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice and mutual respect." The hologram shifted to show Earth's current diplomatic framework, a complex network of alliances, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. "We maintain strength not to wage war, but to ensure we can choose peace from a position of security." "This is why war with humanity would be different," James added. "We don't fight for glory or conquest. We fight when peace is no longer an option. And we fight to restore peace, not to destroy our enemies." The display showed modern peacekeeping operations, humanitarian missions, and joint military exercises between former adversaries. "Every soldier we train is also trained in diplomacy. Every weapon we develop has a peaceful application." Sarah turned to face the Federation delegation directly. "You see maintaining peace as controlling others. We see it as understanding them." The hologram now displayed Earth's first contact protocols, carefully crafted plans that emphasized communication and understanding over military response. "We prepared for your arrival not just with weapons, but with linguists, anthropologists, and diplomats. And yet you show us your capacity for war," Kexley observed. "Because true peace requires understanding," Sarah explained. "You need to understand that humanity can fight if necessary, but chooses not to. That choice, made from strength, not weakness, is what makes us different." The display showed the gradual transformation of Earth's military forces, from pure combat units to versatile groups equally capable of fighting wars or providing disaster relief. "We maintain peace not through fear, but through options." James highlighted specific examples: military vessels designed to convert to rescue ships, defense satellites that also tracked climate patterns, soldiers trained as both warriors and peacekeepers. Your Federation sees peace as a tool of control, Sarah concluded. We see it as an achievement, something earned through understanding, maintained through wisdom, and protected through strength. The Federation delegates watched as the hologram showed humanity's current state, a civilization capable of both tremendous destruction and remarkable cooperation. Their expressions, even alien as they were, showed growing comprehension. You offer us much to consider, Kexley finally said. Your species' path is unexpected. Because you came expecting to find either warriors or weaklings, Sarah replied. Instead, you found a species that learned to be both and neither, strong enough to fight, wise enough not to want to. As the station continued its orbit, Earth came back into view, its blue expanse a testament to humanity's achievement. They had learned to maintain peace on a planet of diverse cultures, religions, and ideologies, not through force, but through understanding. The Federation delegates withdrew again for consultation, but their body language had changed. They had come expecting to decide humanity's fate. Instead, they found themselves questioning their own understanding of strength and peace. The question now was whether they could learn what humanity had discovered through centuries of hardship, that true peace comes not from the ability to win wars, but from the wisdom to avoid them. A new understanding. The diplomatic station's main chamber had grown quiet. Earth's shadow now fell across the viewport, casting the room in an ethereal twilight. After 4 days of presentations and discussions, the moment of decision had arrived. Ambassador Kexley stood at the center of the Federation delegation, their scales now displaying patterns that none of the human observers had seen before, complex swirls of deep violet and azure that seemed to pulse with internal light. We have deliberated, Kexley announced, all 4 arms held in a formal posture. For 10,000 years, the Federation has expanded through strength. Those who resisted were conquered. Those who submitted were protected. This was the natural order. Sarah Chen stood calmly, though James noticed her hands clasped tightly behind her back. The future of humanity hung on what came next. But you, Kexley continued, their translator struggling to convey the complexity of their tones, you have shown us something we have never encountered. A species that understands both war and peace, not as opposites, but as 2 parts of the same whole. The Ventari delegates stirred, their crystalline forms catching the starlight. We came to offer you a choice, one of them said. Submit or fight. You have shown us that perhaps we were the ones who needed to choose. James stepped forward. And what choice have you made? Kexley's scales shifted to a new pattern, one that seemed to mirror the stars themselves. The Federation has always believed that strength comes from unity, all species following one path, our path. But your history shows another kind of strength. The holographic system activated one final time, but not by human command. The Federation delegates had loaded their own presentation, images of their conquered worlds, their subjugated species, their enforced peace. We saw ourselves as bringers of order, Kexley admitted, but you have shown us that true order cannot be imposed. It must be built, understood, earned. Sarah felt her breath catch. Are you suggesting the Federation withdraws its demand for submission? Kexley announced. Instead, we propose something unprecedented. An alliance, not of conqueror and conquered, but of equals. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Ventari delegates' crystalline forms pulsed with light, and even the stoic security details shifted their positions. You would break 10,000 years of tradition? James asked, his academic curiosity overtaking his diplomatic restraint. You have shown us that tradition without evolution leads to stagnation, Kexley replied. The Federation has conquered countless species, but we have never truly learned from them. Perhaps that has been our greatest weakness. Sarah stepped forward, her diplomatic training warring with hope. And what would this alliance mean? Exchange rather than submission. Learning rather than conquest. Your species has mastered something we never considered. The ability to grow stronger through understanding rather than dominance. The holographic display shifted again, showing a possible future. Federation worlds and human colonies working together, sharing knowledge, combining strengths. Your weapons are impressive, one of the Ventari noted, but your real strength lies in your ability to choose when not to use them. This is something the Federation needs to learn. Kexley spread all four arms in a gesture of openness. We offer partnership, your understanding of peace through strength, combined with our resources and reach. Together, we could reshape the galaxy not through conquest, but through cooperation. Sarah and James exchanged glances. This was more than they had hoped for. Not just avoiding war, but potentially transforming the very nature of galactic civilization. Of course, Sarah said carefully, such an unprecedented proposal would require careful consideration. Earth's nations would need to discuss, debate, understand the implications. As they should, Kexley agreed. That ability to question, to debate, to seek consensus. These are the very strengths that impressed us. Take the time you need. The Federation has learned, at last, the value of patience. As the formal proceedings concluded and the delegates began to discuss the practical details of continued diplomatic relations, Sarah found herself back at the viewport, Earth now emerging from shadow into light. They came to test our strength, James said quietly, joining her. Instead, we taught them a new definition of it. Sarah nodded, watching as the Federation flagship adjusted its position, no longer looming over Earth, but holding station alongside humanity's orbital defenses. Equal, respectful. Perhaps that's humanity's true gift to the galaxy, she replied. Not our capacity for war, or our desire for peace, but our understanding that true strength lies in knowing when to choose which. As Earth completed another rotation, its nations already buzzing with news of the Federation's unexpected proposal, the future seemed to hold not just peace, but something far more precious, the possibility of genuine understanding between the stars. The Federation had come seeking to conquer or fight. They left having learned perhaps the most important lesson humanity had to teach, that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from transforming them into friends.